Hey, what's up? It's another episode of Watch You Strappin. These aren't watch reviews, they're just a quick wristwatch check, and just to show a strap pairing, usually aftermarket. And I would also consider these reviews extensions or extensions to reviews that if I've done one, which I need to get on. I haven't done one in a while. Or perhaps I should just do a format now moving forward where my reviews are basically a collective of mini reviews or little mini thoughts. I think that might be even easier so I don't have to go back and do one big review. But I don't know. Most people probably wouldn't like that. They want to just watch one video, but I don't want to do what other people are doing for the most part. But whatever, we'll see how it goes. Or at least I would consider these as well continuing user experience videos, just to share my thoughts on a particular watch and how it's going and anything else that might come to mind. So what we got here is the Laurier. Well, I guess in proper form it's the Urban Gentry by Laurier Merlin. This is a Weems-style pilot watch. So a Weems-style pilot watch is Weems Pilot Watch is an very early example of pilot watches used by primarily the British RAF, but I believe the American Army Air Force did use some of them as well. But mainly these were watches used by the Allies during World War II. And these were typically, I believe, designed by, I want to say it's Lieutenant Commander Weems. I should know this because I did do like a slight review and kind of history on this when I had my Weems pilot watch like reissue or replica. That's what they call it from Longines. The L2.606.4, and they did make another Weems style pilot watch, but it's a bit larger, not really true to form at 33 millimeters, which they basically typically averaged and maxed out at in size. They were started off supposedly, I believe, as small as 27 millimeters, but in the end they did go up to 33. There's various designs that were done by Longines, Omega. I think they might have been the largest producers of these watches during the war, and as well as the other brands were Movado, JLC, and Zenith. So those 5 brands primarily. I think there's some by Wittnauer, but I believe Wittnauer is basically part of Longines. I'm not 100% sure like their association, but anyways, going to this watch, this is basically inspired by those watches and maybe a few others of that general period. It's not exact to anything, which is great. So this is like really a true homage without being a copy. My Longines would be considered a copy, but that's fine because Longines was one of the original manufacturers of that. And pretty much nobody else has or probably will ever produce such a vintage style, reissue replica. Like Omega, not very likely. I can't see JLC or Movado or what was the other one, Zenith, really doing that. Longines definitely has no problem dipping into their historic past and offering very true reissues of the past watches. And so I was really happy and glad and honored to have been able to own one. I would have kept it, but I had to push things around and see which watches I would typically wear more often. And at 33 millimeters, even though I gave it, it's the type of watch, I think with any watches that are smaller or maybe even bigger than you would typically wear, forget about your normal size watches, average size watches that you do wear. Say you're 40 and you dip down significantly above or below that, you need some time to, what I said, acclimate to the, such a shift in proportions of the size of a watch that you're normally used to, and then it'll start to sink in and you get comfortable with it. I think, at least I do, being a bit smaller or a bit larger than you normally would, and provided that it isn't ridiculously oversized, like overhang, or super small, where you just got too much wrist showing in compared to the watch. Though you might have to take it in the context of its original design and era, perhaps, of when it was made, to make it seem okay. Overall, it should work out. Anyways, no problem here. This has been greatly modernized with modern build. Still uses an acrylic crystal, which I believe they used in the past anyways, which is great. Though personally, I would have liked to have sapphire. I don't need the extra maintenance, although I get why people might still like or want to use acrylic. But for me, I don't find it to be enough of at least a visual aesthetic difference from sapphire. I can't see the warmth that people are always harping about about acrylic crystals. It still looks clear to me. Maybe there's a difference in the clarity and distortion, right? Which is funny. Like, is it clear or is it distorted? It's kind of both with acrylic, I think. But it's not that big of a difference to my eyes, where I think an acrylic crystal is really that desirable. But I won't shun it, because actually I do have several acrylic watches in my collection now. It's just the way they're built with the watches that certain watches that I have, and that's fine. I take pretty good care of my watches, and it is pretty easy to buff out. But just saying, it's always preferable to have sapphire if I can. But I think I would take acrylic over, say, mineral. I don't know. You can't really polish mineral as far as I'm aware of. And I think, why would people use it? I guess it's more likely to crack than sapphire too. I don't know. There's not a huge advantage for mineral. That seems actually worse than acrylic in some ways, because at least you can repair it to some degree. But anyways, going back to this watch, it has the typical Weems-style watch designs, namely the rotating bezel, bidirectional, usually friction fit. This can be used as a timing bezel, but originally these were called second setting bezel. This is how they circumvented the fact that most of the movements at the time early on did not have hacking. So to be able to synchronize watches to the second, on the minute, to the second, either way, to synchronize it properly to a known, source that they would all synchronize their times to, their watches to. You can shift the starting point of the top of the minute by rotating the bezel, so that, say, if it was right about, you hear a tone right about here at 55, you just move the top of the minute or the seconds to that part, and then that's when the start of it is, and you just set the minute hand accordingly. It might sound confusing the way I'm describing it, but it really isn't. I think I did a video to explain how to use the second setting bezel, and look it up online. It's fairly easy. You just basically shift the starting reference of the seconds hand, but everything else will align fine just with that offset. And but since this does have hacking, that's not going to be an issue to hack the watch exactly to the top of the at the 12, which you normally would do to be the start of the minute, right, and the start of your seconds. And so now you can actually use the bezel more for timing purposes, and it's locked down by the second crown found by the 4 o'clock, which is cool. I like this design. I actually prefer this over a crown up by the 2, or maybe even at the 10 usually, because it adds some visual weight to the watch. And if you're going to add some offset visual weight to a watch, personally, I like it to be on the lower half hemisphere. I guess it's not really around, well, it kind of is, but the lower half of the watch rather than the top. It just makes it look more top heavy, which throws it off even more to me, versus if you left it on the bottom half, it feels more weighted towards the bottom, which is a natural place to put any kind of visual weight, in my opinion. This does have also a screw down crown, I believe 100 meters of water resistance, which is plenty. And yeah, I've gotten this wet plenty of times. I don't wear it on the wet leather strap when it does. And I don't know why people have to bitch about leather straps on dive watches. I mean, use your brain. Take off the leather strap, put on a rubber strap, a metal bracelet, something, nylon, right, NATO, whatever. Something that can handle water. And I think typically if you're going to go diving into some significant pool of water, body of water, think ahead, switch your strap off to something that will handle it, and there you go. Anyways, we'll get into this strap in a moment, but yeah, This is nice and thin. Again, this has been, I mentioned it earlier, which I don't think I did. This is 37 millimeters now. So 4 millimeters larger than what the Weems pilot watches were in the beginning, but this is a much more wearable size that's, I think, upscaled perfectly for modern times. I don't think I would want this larger than a 37 anyways. These were relatively small watches. They're not Fliegers like the Germans. They had like 55 millimeter, watches that were strapped around a thick jacket, right? These Weems originally, I think they weren't really strapped on the outside, and if they were, I don't think they were though. I think they were pretty much on the wrist, and they were probably underneath the jacket cuff or the thick set of gloves, right? You lift them out of the way to reveal the time, and then just kind of hide it back when you don't need it. It's not something you have to be looking at all the time, but I think when you have the time to look at it, you'd be able to just quickly move a sleeve cuff or the gloves, the bottom of the gloves out of the way that might be covering it, and see the watch just fine. And these could also be worn, I believe, meant to be worn outside of actual service. Like, you don't have to be wearing these just on the plane. You could wear them in your dress uniform when maybe you're not flying and off duty or something, versus I believe the Fliegers were more issued and only used when the pilots would go actually into the plane and use them for actual missions. They weren't really going to be worn outside of that. So yeah, just a lovely off-white dial. I think the loom is pretty cool on this. That is actually using like something like Lumicast, if it's not, but it's basically a 3D version of loom that's been shaped and then applied, and so it should have a good amount of loom on it. Though I have to admit, given the fact that it is supposed to be 3D loom, it does work pretty good, but it's actually not quite as maybe as strong or bright as I think that something like this should be. It could be because it's been tinted kind of on the Fotina side, but I mean, it is sufficient and satisfactory for my purposes, because I would rate any good loom to be something you can at least fully charge just before bed. And if by the time I get up early in the morning, which is usually 5 something or 6, which is still pretty dark, I can still make it out, then that would have, even though it's dim and I can still make it out though, that will suffice for being a very good and usable loom, in my opinion. Now, let's get into the strap. This is from Atelier De Griff. They are, I want to say they're based in France or perhaps even Belgium. I gotta check it out. I bought this some time ago. They do exist. They do a lot of custom straps, but a lot of their own designs. Pretty nice stuff. Not cheap, but not super expensive either. And I think this is a bun strap that I got from them for actually my Seiko speed timer. Well, I call it speed timer though, they don't officially call it. It's the Spirit Smart SCEB 0. Oh my god, I can't remember off the top of my head. I have it now. It's a rebuy, but it's the look back in my video. It's the bullhead chronograph. It's pretty cool. It's got this nice, cool gray anthracite like radiant dial. It looks like kind of like a Speedmaster mixed with in a bullhead configuration or something, basically. But I had originally bought this for that. And my goal was, I don't typically like bun straps because they basically look and can feel a bit thick and unwieldy and a bit complicated because of all the extra paneling and interweaving and the way it straps on. It's, it doesn't look like it would be comfortable. Although the one that came on my Zen 155S Bright Star, that limited edition one, was pretty nice, good quality and comfortable, even though it's a bit thick and the watch isn't necessarily the thinnest, but it actually worked out pretty well. But anyways, going back to this, my goal was to find something that was a bun strap that was low profile and thin, so it could wear as low as possible. I didn't want to add that layer, and so I forgot how I found this place. I just did some search and I just researched and I finally found this. I was like, this looks interesting, and I like the weathering. Well, it kind of looks distressed, right? It's got so it's not. I don't like anything that's brand spanking new, especially for a bun strap necessarily. Something more broken in, because it's an old style kind of, design, and so I think it should look kind of distressed and worn in. And it was actually, has been more broken in as I've worn it, and it looks even better. It was a little bit more uniform, actually, a little bit more than I thought it would be when I first got it, but having worn it for several years. I got that back in
Receiving incoming transmission.
18 or 19, I think, somewhere around there. So it's about, now 2025, so it's about
Receiving incoming transmission.
Is that almost 7 years ago? Something like 6 or 7 years ago. And it's still holding up. It's good leather. It seems to be. I think they are made to order, potentially. It wasn't immediate that they shipped it out, I think. But I don't know if they still make these. I think they may have stopped. Can't recall finding it on the website. They make things in and out of stock here and there, and some things never return, and some things do. But you should check them out. Atelier De Griff. And so, yeah, I just noticed, and I was hoping that this would be a really thin, especially this part.
Incoming transmission.
Especially this part, the I guess what you call it, the leather panel, right? That's typical of a lot of bun straps. That sits between, the straps interwoven between, and it sits between the watch head and your wrist. I think the purpose is originally for pilots was to have this layer, so that because it gets so, I believe, cold up where they're at in the planes, and they weren't pressurized back in the day, the metal could freeze up and you could get, it could get stuck to your skin. So they needed to have something that prevented that, and that's why you had bun straps. If I was saying, I guess it could get particularly hot being up there facing the sun too, but I think typically it's mainly because of preventing a frozen, really cold watch from sticking to your skin, while you're up there. And so I don't have that problem here. But I think it looks good. I also wanted to make sure, besides keeping this layer thin, which you can see it's quite thin, it's thinner than the strap itself, if you can kind of see right next to it from this angle. So it adds to the comfort and just keeps it look so low profile. And I also wanted to keep the cut of the...
Receiving incoming transmission.
Sorry, I'm getting a lot of messages on the side here. Ignore that. I also didn't want the more typical bun strap cut, where the leather panel would bulge out around the watch head, right? Or come out to the outside of it more, and so you'll have this extra bit of paneling that's on the outside of the watch that you can see, especially from the top, but probably from other angles as well. That would add too much visual bulk, in my opinion. I got the idea of getting, and I mentioned this I think when I originally got this strap, when I was looking for it, there was an Oris limited edition, pretty sure it was a manual watch. It was a very old style, like something from World War One, even if not World War Two, but it seemed like more of a World War One thing. It didn't have a running seconds hands. I forgot the name of that Oris pilot watch, but it came on a bun strap, and that bun strap, I noticed the watch was small already, but what really looked good with it, the fact that the panel was straight cut like this is. You see how it's straight from this side all the way across? It doesn't bulge out around the watch head. I like that, and that way at least it keeps it slimmer, and it makes it look smaller in relation to the watch, because the watch would actually, you can see, like even with this size watch, it extends out to beyond the sides of the bun strap panel leather piece, right? And so, in that way, visually, I think it makes the bun strap look a little bit smaller and more compact than it otherwise would if you had the typical cut where it bulges out. And I just like that. And then this helps make the watch sort of look a little bit larger on wrists, but it's not that this was all that small for my wrist. 7 inches for reference. This is a 37 millimeter watch, and yeah, it's got decent hardware. And one keeper here, I put it all the way at the end here. It kind of overlaps this, but I sort of needed to because I wanted to make sure it holds this tail end, because I could move this part down this way more a little bit, but I think this, see, there's nothing that will hold the very tip of it quite as well as the way where it's positioned now. This doesn't really shift, and it holds pretty well the way I have it, and so I'd rather have that than yeah, this, ideally this should be 2 keepers. If you can fit one right here closer to the buckle here, then that would keep, you see how this part is just coming off of it, but you know, just a quick press, it's tight enough for me. It's not really bulging out, right? So this is how it looks like overall. It's comfortable, it's light, and it's, you know, molds to your skin pretty well, and it's thin, as I mentioned before, and I think it works pretty nicely with this watch. I just wanted to give it a different look since I'm off work today. I don't typically wear leather straps at work anyways, sweating, and I always wash my watches, including the straps, so this would be a no-go for any typical work day for me. But since I'm off today, I figured I'd try it and just give it a different look. I do like it on the Havastin canvas strap that I got for it last, that I showed on it last, the M1944C. It's cool, like faded green, khaki-ish color. It just works really well with this watch too. But I think this looks pretty cool, and it's a little different than it came with, but I think it works. I think it sort of looks period correct in some ways. It doesn't look like it doesn't belong with the watch, I would say. But yeah, I think that works pretty nicely. And yeah, I mean, check their site out. Maybe they made these again, or they are still making them, but the last I checked, I was out of curiosity if they still made these. I don't think I could find it on their website anymore, so I don't know. You might be, I think there are some other brands, maybe off Etsy or even eBay or some places that you could get something similar. I did get a pretty thin bund strap. I think it was for, I got one specifically for the Longines Weems pilot watch that I once owned, because this wouldn't work. I was thinking I would like to reuse it, but this is 20 millimeters strap here. And you could take, of course, you could just take the strap itself off, you know, remove it from the paneling. You can use it by itself, and it works pretty good like that too. But I think it's designed to be worn that way, and plus you only have this one keeper, and it tends to work better with this setup with the bund strap. But in case you didn't want to, for whatever reason, and change up the look and still reuse the strap to some degree, you could of course take it off of these, the leather panel here. Just this should just slip right off on this side because there's no hardware, but the hardware, you just take a spring bar tool and pop off this part of the buckle, and then probably remove the keeper, and then the rest of it should just slide through this part here that's kind of running through without problem. And then just, you know, put it back together, and then you'll have a regular watch band, watch strap. I thought I was in the middle of saying something, but I can't remember. Anyways, yeah, just wanted to share this look. I think it's pretty cool, and yeah, I'm going to enjoy it for the day. So thanks for watching, and enjoy your watches. Bye.